Has your child hinted they might be living in the wrong body? Are you seeking ways to better understand and support your transgender child through their unique journey? And wondering, perhaps, how to create a loving and affirming environment for them at home? Do you want to learn effective communication strategies to strengthen your bond with your transgender child? And how to navigate social pressure to ensure their well-being? Are you looking for resources and advice to build a strong support system for both your child and yourself? Join me after the intro for a conversation with a very special friend with whom we will answer these and many more questions. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start. Hi, I'm Rossana D, and this is Forgive and Thrive, a podcast where we explore what thriving in life means and how we can achieve it, irrespective of our past, current condition, and expectations that those around us or society in general may have. Let's go. Welcome to the Forgive and Thrive show. Raising a child is a journey filled with joy, challenges, and profound moments of growth. But when your child comes out as transgender, this journey can take an unexpected turn, bringing a unique set of experiences and questions. Understanding their needs, acceptance, and building a strong bond with your transgender child are essential components of this journey. As a parent, your love and support play a crucial role in your child's well-being and happiness, but societal norms, prejudice, and stigma can make providing that unconditional love and support to a transgender child challenging. So today we aim to provide you with practical advice and insights on how to navigate this path with confidence and compassion. And we dive into this fascinating topic in a conversation with a friend of this show, Wendy Cole. Wendy is a transition mentor. Knowing from childhood she was a girl, Wendy yielded to familial and societal expectation to fit in. At the age of 67, she changed her life with her transition. Beginning in January 2015, she focused internally, accepting who she really was, confronting fears, doubts, and anxieties that held her back for decades. By July 2015, Wendy was living as a woman, and she had a long-awaited surgery in 2017. Today, she helps her clients face significant life changes and has guided others through their transition journey. Hi, Wendy. Welcome back to the Forgive and Thrive show. Thank you so much for taking the time once again to be with us.
Thank you, Rosanna, for having me again. I'm very anxious to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is, as we were just saying, there is quite a lot of confusion on this topic, and especially when it comes to children, we want to make sure that they are supported in the right way. So I think it's a very important and very timely conversation to have. But before we go into that, can we start with you once more? And can you remind us about your journey? Because I believe from what I remember that everything that you now are going to discuss with us about how to navigate this experience or this situation with children stems from your own experience, isn't it?
Yep. A lot of everything that I talk about is from my own personal experience, in addition to a lot of my studying and reading and working with other people and hearing their experiences and all of that. I knew I was different by around age 3, but at that age and even up to 4 or 5, you really don't have the words. I wrote an article recently, and the word child to me defines relationship, not necessarily the age. The age at which a person knows that their identity is incongruent with how they feel, it can vary. But for the parent, whether your child is 5 or 15 or 25 or 35, the same effects apply. The same situation applies. It can be different, of course, at the different ages because of the life experience that that child has had, but it's the parental relationship with the family member, the child. And that's the key. As far as my personal experience goes, I knew from that age, and I really started to realize that there are boys and girls by the time I got into school, and even before, of course. It all starts with when you're born. The doctor looks at the physical anatomy and announces it's a boy or it's a girl. That's when the socialization on the part of the parents, especially initially, begins. It's boy stuff, trucks and guns or dolls and pink blankets or blue blankets, whatever. It's the socialization that we all accept as being just normal way of life. Nobody ever thinks about it. That child is growing and developing. This is one of my key phrases. Gender is between the ears, not the legs. So most of the time when the doctor says it's a boy or it's a girl, they get it right. But when a person is born transgender, something happened during the second trimester when sexual differentiation begins. And in my case, my brain went female, my body went male. So that was a fundamental incongruence with who I am. So a child that is developing begins to find that, yes, society has two, and they call them sexes. We can get into this as we go on, but there's a very big difference between sex and gender. Gender is how you identify, how you see yourself, how you feel about yourself, and whether or not you see yourself as either a boy or girl, man or woman. Nowadays, there's even a blurring of that line, but we won't get there yet. I just knew, and I had to tell my parents at age 10 how I felt. That is incredibly scary for any child. By that age, you know this is not acceptable by social standards, and that it's going to mean that you're very different. And so it takes a lot of courage for a child of any age to actually tell a parent, I'm really a boy or I'm really a girl. It totally goes against the grain of everything society knows and what is commonly accepted. So in my case, psychiatrists got involved, and my parents ended up basically threatening me with being committed to a psychiatric center to be fixed unless I forgot all about this. Back in the last century, especially in the 50s, 60s, even 70s, that kind of thing was pretty common. Things did not begin to change until the latter part of the last century and into this one. I know a lot of people who struggled and had similar life experiences to mine. And that's why I feel it's so important that parents understand. And because of how we are in society with our socialization and everything that we've been taught about sexual identity and all of that, parents have really no context to really understand this, the framework around which to understand this or deal with it. And then I know from parents that I've talked to, it's just as difficult for them to wonder about this. And immediately they go right into the mode of, well, what do I do? How can I fix this? What did I do to cause this? All these kinds of feelings just surge in the parents. In my case, I wound up having to repress it. I got to the year that I was graduating college, and I decided I really needed to do something about it. That didn't go well for me either. That was 1970. I tried to transition. That's when I found out that this was a psychological condition, according to the medical profession, with no treatment and no cure. At this point, the best thing I can say to parents is begin by accepting what your child says without needing to understand it. Acceptance without the need to understand, because that just dives into a whole spiral of things that you don't want to get into with your child. A lot of people will actually say, your child is going to outgrow this. These feelings will just go away. And I'm here to tell you that does not happen. It's very definitely how we are born. And the biggest thing that I had to struggle with at a very early age was trying to deal with accepting this and how I felt. And then the reactions I got from my parents, the reactions from the doctors, one of whom called me a freak that I should move to New York City. He was not that far off, because that in the last century, your best bet was to live underground. not part of society. There was no way I could do this and remain part of society. So it was a very different lifestyle. And I've met a lot of people over my last 9 years of living authentically that went through the same thing that I did and made a decision. Okay, if you want a career, if you want a job and all of that, check all the boxes that says you're normal. And that's essentially what I did. But this feeling does not go away. It's something that I've lived with my entire life, and it was very debilitating. My health suffered dramatically. I didn't care how I looked. I didn't take care of myself. My blood work was terrible. I was type 2 diabetic, and I was 70 pounds overweight. That's all changed in the last 9 years. In fact, it changed in the first 3 or 4 years that I was living authentically as myself. My health physically has changed dramatically. My blood work comes back perfect all the time now. I'm no longer considered diabetic. I'm off all of the meds. None of those anymore either.
It fills me with joy to see you now thriving, finally being yourself.
Thank you.
But can I be a little bit the devil's advocate here? And when it comes to children, because we were just mentioning before clicking on recording that nowadays there is a lot of confusion or perhaps a lot of noise. And children are there and listening there. So for a parent, it could be, one question could be, how do I know that my child really feels that way? To some extent, you didn't have that sort of noise. You really
No.
had the opportunity to tune in and feel what really was going on inside you. But nowadays we talk about that, and we can watch TV, we can listen to that in podcasts, and we can listen to that around.
Right.
And at school, nowadays it's all, everybody is working on eggshells with different pronouns. So how do we know that a child has a strong understanding and a clear understanding and perhaps feeling about their gender identity, and not just perhaps reporting something they heard?
That's a very fair question and assessment, Rosanna. And things have changed dramatically from when I first faced this in childhood and first faced this as a 20-something adult. We have social media. The kids walk around with smartphones and have connections with other kids, other people in their community. It's a whole different lifestyle. But again, it all comes back to a child facing their parents and saying, this is who I really am. That's still just as scary. But today, if it's not handled by the parent correctly, what happens is it drives the child away from them and drives them toward their online communities where they do get support. The kids nowadays don't really think twice about that. It just is. They accept it. And that makes it even more difficult for the parents because now their child is accepted by another group and everything is going fine for them in that group. But when they get home or they get around extended family, it's not as accepted. And that's where the difficulty really comes in today. Well, parents really still believe, even today, that we will outgrow these feelings, or this is just something that you are saying because it's a trend. No one in the LGBTQ plus community does this because it's a trend or it's cool or it's something social or all their friends are doing it on social media, whatever. That's not the case. We do it to survive. The suicidal ideation that comes from trying to repress this is huge. I looked at my parents, took a long, hard look at them and the way they treated me. They were doing the best they could for me out of the knowledge that they had, the beliefs that they had, and actually trying to protect me from society. And for that, I have forgiven them. That was huge for me because the way my parents treated me and how they always monitored my behavior all the way into my 20s as to whether or not this was actually real for me. I look back on it and it was abuse, but it was well-meaning. And that's why I just decided, no, I forgive them for everything that they did. But that's underlying what I want other parents to understand about their children. This is not something that they make up because it's socially cool to do. That socialization process that started from their birth, how their aunts and uncles and their extended family and their neighbors and everybody reacts to them, that's what drives them to stay hidden as much as possible until they can't take it anymore. And they do come out. And today, they're actually, because of online communities that they're part of, it's easier for them, in one sense, to come out because they may have friends who did, and they may be able to talk with people who did and see that it is possible for them. Life is about possibilities, even at that age. And once they see that it's possible, and this feeling that I have inside me is just so strong, I have to let it out. I have to tell my parents. That's what they're doing. Being transgender is not a mental disorder anymore. It's how we're born. It's who we are. The whole thing about some parents think, okay, in fact, that's what my parents were worried about. Oh, you're gay. No. That's a totally different subject. That's sexual orientation, which is a totally different topic from gender identity. Most people in society equate sex with gender, and the two are not synonymous. Sex is who you're attracted to. It's the sexual orientation and your physical anatomy. In my case, I considered my physical anatomy from probably the beginning of puberty. I considered that to be my birth defect. No, this is not something that we decide. It's not something that is socially cool to do. It's who we are.
I think one point that you made that perhaps shifts a lot the perception is really this difference between being considered a psychological problem into a medical one. Because I think there is more perhaps willingness to understand and appreciate that there is that difference if we label it as medical rather than psychological. I think that change was instrumental really to change perhaps the perspective of some parents at least. I love what you said about talking with the child about their gender identity and what they think about it. So do you have any advice on how to tackle that conversation with them?
One of the first things that parents need to do is accept that child's statement as being fact for them. I know that is very difficult for some parents to do. Typically, what they'll say is, "Are you sure this is right for you? Are you sure this is you?" And that's something they should never say. It reinforces that child's self-doubts and it diminishes the parent's support for them. The thing that a child of any age, from single digits into teens and 20-somethings and up, they need self-acceptance. This is something they've struggled with. This is something that they've repressed. I repressed it for 67 years. The last person I talked to about it was 1970. I didn't talk to anybody openly about this until 2015. That's 45 years of repression. So here's your child who is now 15 or 22 or even 8 or 10 saying, "This is how I feel." Understand they have been repressing that from an earlier age. It's something they've known because of the socialization. They have been hiding it, repressing it, struggling against it, saying, "Are you sure this is for you?" Or, "Do you think you'll be happy?" That is totally counterproductive and it just diminishes the parent's support and relationship with them. Some parents will take it to another level and go the other side. So picture a 14-year-old going from male to female, and they're now doing what is called socially transitioning. They're dressing as the gender they identify as, and all of that. And a parent looks at them and says, "You are so pretty," meaning to be supportive and reinforce, but that's still not the right thing to say at that stage, because that child, they're still working on their self-acceptance. A better way of saying that would be, "Oh, I think you look really nice today." That's something that is more believable by the child, and that will be accepted. But going over the top and overdoing it is something totally different. It is something the child won't believe. They'll look at, "Oh, why are you saying I'm so pretty? What's going on?" Another thing that parents will do that is not helpful at all to establishing a really good relationship is they're worried about what they're going to say to extended family, relatives, neighbors, co-workers, friends in general. It's very important to work with the child, the person. It's their story to tell, not the parents. If they're going to tell an aunt or an uncle, well, Jim is now Jane, and she's transitioning to be a girl. That's kind of the wrong way to phrase it, and they shouldn't be telling the relative that. Not without first talking with the child, establishing what should be said and how it should be shared and when it should be shared. The child should be part of that process. It's their story. And the older they are, the more important that is. Initially, within the core family group, everybody should accept the new appearance, the new name, the new pronouns. Using the old name, the birth name, is potentially very hurtful. They have it associated with a time that they were not comfortable with in their own skin, with who they are. This is their new identity.
If you had to put perhaps 2 or 3 things that can represent like challenges, do you think that children need to face and parents need to be aware of and ready to help them?
Self-acceptance, accepting who we are, what we are, and being comfortable with being in front of other people, not just family, but other people in general. That's the thing that we struggle with the most. That self-acceptance is so critical. That doesn't come overnight, but that self-acceptance is very weak in the beginning. It's just developing. The more a child is faced with acceptance from adults that this is okay, their own personal self-acceptance begins to grow and develop. And it does take time. So anything that goes back at the child that says this is wrong really impairs that personal self-acceptance. It's incredibly difficult when there is this total incongruence between your physical body and your mind, who you see yourself as. And then puberty sets in, and all these strange things begin to happen. And it's not welcomed at all. It's a very difficult experience. And then to put that on top of it, of school and the social life and dating. Oh my God. I think I may have had 3 dates in all of my high school years. I was just terrified that girls would figure me out. And when I discovered that there were gay boys or gay men, I was terrified of them too, because they might figure me out. I had this secret to hide. So that's what's going on inside of a child who is still repressing this, especially at the onset of puberty. It's a very real feeling. And again, at that age, they don't know what to talk about it. or how to talk about it. So making it easy for them as far as the parent goes, of opening up that conversation. And even though it's uncomfortable for the parent, they need to go into it with a feeling of support, acceptance, and love, and believe what they're saying.
Well, I suppose that, as you said at the very beginning, there is that announcement of the sex of the baby when it's born. And from that moment on, you can go to any shop, any department store. Girls' clothes are pink, boys' clothes are blue, and there are no other options. And
Right.
and that creates really expectations on that child and how that child has to go forward in life. So it's very, I mean, you said it very rightly and nicely at the beginning, socialization of something that should be natural, but it's completely changed by this very strict way of thinking, of doing it. So not having that flexibility,
Exactly.
and have children that they can familiarize, with, without having these very strong boundaries.
Very important for parents to be there for them, to help them tell others when they choose to support their gender expression, and insist that other family members respect them and accept it as well. And transitioning is really for the person alone who is doing it. Parents should not impose conditions on it or impose their own wishes and their own hopes for that child's future. It's fairly common that people will say, you'll never be happy doing this. And that's not true. Going through this total incongruence with what you feel in your own mind and how your own body and presentation is, and you're locked in to a social situation through socialization from parents, society in general, your school, your workplace. As you get older, you're locked into that role, social roles, and the expectations that go along with them. I was working in Center City, Philadelphia, in an office building, and I'd have lunch outside, and people would be walking by, and it was a nice sunny spring day and all of that. I had to go eat inside for the rest of the springtime and time that I was working there. It just triggered so many painful feelings seeing women walk by, how they were presenting, how they were walking, how happy they were. And I knew that's what I should be. That's what your child is facing. Repressing it doesn't help. It's very, very debilitating. It's very harmful. They just need to be who they are. That's just it. And in order to do that in our society, we need to break through that socialization and that stigma of how wrong this is. There's a belief out there that says this is wrong.
I love where you are going with the conversation. So, how can parents really help their children, especially a transgender child, to build the necessary resilience to be able to face whatever bullying or discrimination or whatever is out there?
One of the things that helps us at almost any age is how grounded we are in accepting ourselves and who we are. And then with the bullying, the name calling, things like that, learning to let it go and walk away from it and just accept who you are and what you are. One of the things that I found, and this is the thing that I encourage my transgender clients to do, is learn how to blend into society. That's your best defense right there. And that's something that the parent can reinforce behaviors and mannerisms. Socialization, we're socialized to be boys, go to Boy Scouts, play baseball, football, do all those masculine, manly type things. Well, even though I didn't want to do any of that and I resisted it, I was still forced to do it. I had to go through a personal process of deconstructing all of that as much as I possibly could and learning how to adapt new ways, new mannerisms, new behaviors, so that when I'm out in public or meeting total strangers for the first time, I'm just totally accepted as Wendy and who I am. That's what a child needs to go through to be accepted by others, especially outside the family. It's also a very difficult thing, I understand, for parents. He was expected to carry on the family name. Well, that's not going to happen. It just isn't. And that's just the way it is. And people have to adapt to that. Transitioning, for me, it was an ongoing process for at least the first 3-4 years. Every day is new experiences. The parent should be open to talking with them about what their day was like, what they experienced, and be open to just listening to them. Even if they are not in agreement, it doesn't do any good to put that on the child. Listen, accept, try to understand and relate to them and support them and just say, I love you no matter what. That in and of itself is a huge beginning for any child.
How can parents create a supportive network around them? Because if we think a completely different situation, for example, with a child picking up a particular sport, let's say, parents tend to socialize with other parents and other families whose children are playing the same sport. If we translate that into the transgender, is there a need to create a supportive network with families who also are experiencing the same with transgender children? Or is more, this is the network that we have, it's that network that has to accept who my child is?
Well, when parents hear some other group of parents saying something not supportive or negative or derogatory about their child, they need to speak up, not in anger. That won't do any good. But speak up in a more supportive way and say, this is how my child was born. Start with that statement and then go on to say something to the effect of, I totally support my child. This is who they are. And I request that you do the same. If that adult or group of adults won't do that, then don't have your child around them at all. It's really good to participate, for an adult to participate in the child's experiences. If they have a support group and if parents can be part of that, that's great. If the child is accepted to play a sport, go there, be part of it, support them, and show them that you're proud of them. That has far more weight or impact on that child's development and developing that sense of self-acceptance. I never felt any love for myself until I became Wendy. That's the first time in my life that I experienced self-love. And it wasn't immediate. It's like self-acceptance takes a year or so to develop as you begin to see that, yes, I can live this way. And my parents do support me. The family supports me. They act normally with me. They just change the name, change the pronouns, don't care that I'm dressing as female or male now, and that's fine. Be very careful of who you initially have your child around. Don't, if there's any conflicts at all with other family members, don't put that on the child. Don't even really discuss it with the child. Just let it go and let them be and do their own thing.
And from creating a supporting environment around them, going to advocating for their rights, the inclusion, starting with school perhaps, then other social settings, society in general. How can parents really step up and do that advocacy for their children?
If there are issues going on at school, as a parent, go to the school and talk with the school administrators about it and stand up for their child. That's especially important, especially if it's in a situation where the child sees this and sees a parent who is actually advocating and standing up for them and believing in them. That has a huge positive effect on the child. I know for some parents it might be a difficult thing to do and kind of scary as well, but that's also showing your child that you, as a parent, can state something in society that is not part of the norm and that you're trying to make a difference. And that difference will apply to every other person like their child in that school.
I love that idea that we can all include each other, and no matter how we feel and no matter who we are, we all have the right to be part of that environment or society and not to be underground, as you said.
Right.
Right. And with this thought, I would love to come back on you before we conclude this beautiful conversation and ask you what you are working on and if there is anything specific that you are planning for 20, the end of 2024.
Well, I wrote the article, Love Knows No Gender, Parenting a Transgender Child, and I'm currently in editing mode on a draft of a book by that I hope to make that title. And in it, I'm putting together all the guidelines and all the things that a parent needs to know. And I open it up in the beginning, like in the first couple of chapters, just putting this whole experience of being transgender, having been born this way, that it is a condition that we're born with. And I try to give them some context of how to comprehend it. I don't expect them to understand. That's a very difficult thing for people who are not transgender to understand how this feels. But knowledge about it, so they have context. And then throughout the rest of the book, I'm putting in a lot of things about conversations, how to do things, and it's basically going to be a guideline for parents. I'm in the process of talking to a publisher of getting that out, especially once I finish this editing that I'm doing on the draft that I've got. I'm really excited to put it out there. I think it's a very important thing. I don't want other children to experience what I did in my life. And my mission and my legacy of what I want to do is to do everything I can to help everyone in society comprehend this and to deal with it, while I'm also supporting other people in transition and their parents.
Beautiful. So if there are parents out there that are experiencing, perhaps they are at the beginning of that journey with their children, where they can find you?
Meetwendycole.com. My calendar's there, my newsletter's there, and I'll link to my main website is there, which goes to podcasts that I've been in. And I'm very interested in talking with other parents, and I look forward to hearing from them.
Fantastic. As always, we will put all the links in the description of today's
Sure.
episode. With the very final question, if there was one take-home message that you would love everybody to remember from this conversation, what that would be?
This is a condition that we're born with. It's not a choice. It doesn't go away. It's a very hurtful experience to try and repress it. So acceptance, both self-acceptance for the child or the person transitioning, and self-acceptance by their family members is so critical and so important and makes all the difference in the world. They will transition so much better and be so much happier. So you have to allow your child to be.
Absolutely. Amen. Well, raising a transgender child requires acceptance and a strong bond, as we just learned. By educating yourself, fostering an affirming home, and maintaining open communication, you can create a supportive space where your child feels valued. Navigating social pressure can be challenging, but with unconditional love and support, you can ensure your child's happiness and resilience is there. And with this in mind, I want to leave you with a quote from Jia Zhang, who said, "There is no greater gift you can give to your child than your acceptance." Wendy, thank you so much for accepting our invitation once more, for taking the time to share your life story and the work that you do and your mission in life. Thank you very much. I truly enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Rosanna. I've thoroughly enjoyed it as always, and thank you for having me back.
Thank you. Well, we would love to know what you think about this topic. Is your child or the child of someone you know perhaps come out claiming to be in the wrong body? If so, how is their journey going? If you are encountering challenges along the way, I'm sure you will find our conversation with Wendy very useful and inspiring. But if you need extra help with a transgender child, do check Wendy's website, her work, and follow her on social media. You will find all the links in the description of today's episode. Hopefully not, but if you have been affected in any way by the topic we discussed today, as always, I invite you to seek professional help. Join me next time when we will continue exploring inspiring and challenging situations. Because remember, we are together in this journey. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the notification bell and like this video. See you in the next one.